So what we're going to talk about now is layering to enhance your samples and also to enhance your synthesized elements. So what I'm going to do is I actually took one of my older songs, opened up the project file, and I figured this would be a perfect example. Now these are some of the field recordings I'm using from this. So we have this, just a simple footstep. Let me crank that up a little bit. So simple footstep right there. Door opening and closing. A water drip. And a thunder and lightning storm. Nice little rainstorm ambiance. So let's go over here and see what I did with it. Play it really quick. So one of the first things I did was I actually put a nice little rhythmic kind of pattern with the storm going along with the footsteps. And we also have here the door opening and closing. So that kind of fades out our storm and outside sounds while maintaining our little rhythmic pattern that we have going on here with the water dripping and with our footsteps. At the same time, I faded in my actual pads and everything right here. So we're starting to build up a nice little intro here, giving kind of a certain type of feeling with it. And I actually used the dripping sounds as rhythm patterns. So you can see this can be used as an effective intro, and you can also use it alongside in parts. One thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to mute the bass on this, just so when I skip around, you can hear the elements of this and not so much the bass. So now we've faded out all the actual sounds that we have right there. Now if we go further where the song's actually progressing along, I'll reintroduce some of them in. Footsteps there. Reintroduce the drips. Reintroduce both of them. So you can see these add a complementarily nice little bit to percussion. But we're not going to be strictly talking about percussive elements and stuff like this. This is just to demonstrate how you can use these effectively in a song alongside with a pad. So we'll stop this and open a new project file real quick. So what I have opened up top here in our audio lane is that rain file that I showed you earlier with the Audix microphone, the kick drum mic. So we'll start that playing. I've got it on loop, actually. So we can leave this playing in the background. What we're going to do is enhance it a bit with Massive. So we're going to make it sound, we're going to blend a synthesized element along with our natural field recording right here. So the easiest way to do with this, since this is rain, let me just close my transport bar real quick, is go over here, turn off our OSC1. We're going to turn on our noise oscillator, which is already on, white noise, and turn the amplitude up first. Now if we go to all the way to filter 1, we'll just start playing this real fast. So obviously that sounds nothing like rain, and it's a little bit loud. So what I'm going to have to do is go over here, bring Massive down a little bit in volume. So that's more similar to it. But we don't have any variation with our white noise. So what we're going to do here is we can either use an LFO. So let's use an LFO real quick, put it onto the color right about there. See, that's kind of a rather boring pattern and rather symmetrical. So what we're going to do is take a look at some of the ones we have in here. We have vibrato wave, bending, random step. So let's try random step 1. little bit more random to it, but what you could also do is go over here to say 7, turn this into a performer, and go quickly randomize all curves. And randomize upper curves. We'll do a couple of randomizes, see what we get. Blend these together. And what we'll do, just simply drag this over and replace our LFO. Now let's play it. So we got a little bit of randomness to it, but what we're going to do is turn down the amplitude on it a bit. So it's not quite as dramatic. Now it's still not sounding quite like rain, so what we're going to do next is go to our effects, add a reverb. And it's also going to fit in a little bit better with the microphone, since there's natural reverb from outside and where the microphone was placed. This will just make to taste. Let's increase the size a little bit. Density, color. So we got a nice little bass starting with that. Now we'll go to the EQ that's built in massive. Well, I've probably said before, I'm not exactly the craziest about this EQ. It's quick and dirty for what we're doing, so... let's boost a little bit of frequency there. Don't want so much the high noise. Turn down the high shelf a bit. We got a nice sounding rain sound. So we'll mute the main sound real quick so you can hear what this sounds like now. Now we could try bright noise. Doesn't sound quite as well. Brown noise. Brown noise actually sounds quite nice with this. Sounds more like inside hitting on the roof. Tape hiss, not so much. So we'll go back to white noise since that's default what we were doing. Now the other thing we could do is get the level set up. So what we're going to do is go to our mixer right here. Turn down massive a bit. And we can actually go in and EQ massive now. Try and get these to blend together a little bit better. So if we go to low shelf, don't so much need to do the low end as much as we need to do the high end. So we'll go with the high shelf real quick. Take off some of the top end. And we could actually go through and do a frequency sweep. Let's narrow this out a bit. See where enhancements would sound good. So right there, it's starting to sound a lot nicer as a rain sound. Oh, a little bit too loud. And once again, you can use the same techniques that I showed before with the multi-band compressor and stuff to EQ out specific ranges and stuff like that if you want to. And actually, let's combine these two together using that technique. We can get rid of some of the noise on this. Fill it in with this. So we'll go over here real quick. Let's go to multi-band compressor. Under dynamics, take a gander where our problem frequency may lay. So that sounds a lot better right there. Now let's start inking it back. I like that sound so far. Alright, enhance it right there. Now we'll add in our synthesized elements. Whoops, clicked the wrong thing right there. So all we'd have to do is get our levels to taste real quick. And we're going to expand upon this with our actual effects bus and processing tutorial. So this is a quick example of what you can do with, say, a rain sound. Now, I couldn't think of a better way to segue into actually using effects buses and gluing things back together a bit. So when you're using effects buses with ambient, you'll also often hear a lot of people using reverb and things like that. We're going to be doing that, but first things first, let's try and glue this sound back together so it sounds more natural. So let's get it playing again. That's what we're adding in. So first thing we're going to do is just add a universal bus to send both of these tracks to. So I'm going to add a group channel. This is going to vary for all your different DAWs, but the capability should be there. So what I'm going to do really quick is route both of these channels into it. So we are going to send to group 1 from our rain sound. And I'm going to do a pre-fader because I'm probably going to end up completely shutting these down, the dry signals. So this is currently at 0.6, so we'll send it at the same level. Because the levels I have set at the moment seem fine, so I can just completely mute this now, and it's going all the way at the same level to group 1. Now this I have set to negative 2159, that's what I eyeballed it in at. And we will send it to that, the same thing. So negative 21.59. And we're also doing pre-fader again, so I can completely get rid of these. Now it's playing on the same channel here. So now we can EQ this as a group, actually, which is what's lovely about this, and do all our effects at the same time. Let me get rid of some of this clutter. So we have this opened up, and the first thing we're going to do is add a reverb to it. Now you could use just your default ones here. What I'm going to be using is one of my UAD plugins, just because what's the point of having them if you don't use them? So I'm going to go to Dreamverb, and we're just going to load up a preset for it. Let's go with Bright Ambience. It's actually a guitar preset, but it sounds kind of nice. Or we can go with Hall. Actually, I like the sound of this. So let's see how it sounds with our synthesis added in already. Let's go back to dry a little bit. Adjust our mix on this. Not too crazy about this preset with this. So what we'll do next, mess around with some of the presets. Obviously, you'd be going around trying to find something, or you could dial it in yourself. Okay, indoor pool. That sounds like it could be interesting. Huge tunnel. This might work nicely. It's got a much more natural sound to it now. Okay, so now we have our reverb dialed in. And now that we have the reverb dialed in, we could dial in our levels a little bit more if we wanted to do so, directly what we're sending to it. But what this reverb's doing for us is adding a little bit glue into the sound, so it sounds more natural now, and it doesn't sound like they're coming from completely different recordings. This also comes in handy when you're mixing different field recordings from different areas. Say you record something in your room that has natural room reverb to it versus something outside. This comes in handy a lot of times for gluing the sounds back together and making it sound more natural. So we could further add this. Maybe a bit of delay or something like this, but we're going for a more natural sound with this, so we can do some spatial stuff. We could also do some compression or some more cleanup to it as well. So now that we have the things glued together, let's take a look and do some of our same dynamic processing that we did last time with our multiband compressor. We already have our verb on this, but what I'm going to do now, actually, let me pause this really quick. I need to insert a MIDI note for our channel on massive, because otherwise I can't play it while I'm doing this. So we'll just record this rather quickly. And stop it. Okay, now I can open this up, grab it, drag it. Let me just maximize this. over, like so. Okay. So now we have them all playing together. Let me open back up my channel mixer, close that out, and we were going to be messing with the multiband compressor again. So we will open it up. This is where I can start getting specific with different frequency bands with both the sounds blended together. So I can start bringing it down a little bit here, which seems to be effective. So I'm going to crank up, get rid of that whole entire frequency band. So we can make this a little bit louder and compress it. Take this band, increase it a little bit. Adjust our actual compression on it. And our ratio, frequencies and where everything's starting. Now our highest band, bring it down a little bit. I'm liking this mix the way it stands so far. So we have like so. Now we can EQ it a little bit more. Obviously this would be to taste, but I like the way I have it set up with compression right now, and the multiband compressor. I did some of my EQ work through that, so I think we have a nice little blend right here, showing some of the basics that you can use for effects. But what I'm going to do now is open up some pads or some basic sounds and show you how I can do some more processing with reverb and things like that. Now when it comes to my approach for effects processing, even with ambient music, my approach is less is more, because it's often easy to overdo it with your effects and kind of ruin the work that you've done with EQing and cleaning up sounds and stuff like that to begin with. So what we're going to do here is we have a fresh setup with Massive. Let me just get this in focus. And we're going to do a preset for it. So let's just find a pad. Let's just go with a pad for Pluto. So we have a default pad here. Not too keen on that. Let's try additive pad. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is turn off the effects that are on within Massive, because I'm not too fond of them. So if we take a look at the ones that it had on it, we had a phaser and a delay. So we might add those back in on our effects chain, but what we're going to do is open up our effects browser. First thing I think I'm going to add is some reverb. And we're not going to go overboard with it. Once again, I'm going to be using my UAD plugin on this, just because I really like the reverbs that are included with it. And these are definitely commercial plugins. UAD, you actually need a processing card in your computer, and they can be a bit expensive. But so I'm going to give this more of a large and bright. I'm going to mix it down a bit. And this sound has a little bit more high end than I want. And I might EQ that out at the end, but this is something to keep in mind. Sometimes when you add a reverb in, it might add in some more low content, some rumbling, just depending on what the algorithm it's using is. So it's always a good idea to kind of, if you've done EQing beforehand of your reverb, to do either a filter or maybe a cutoff of some sort afterwards, some EQing, but let's just do some default EQs. Got graphic, let's go Studio EQ. So what I'm going to do is cut off some of the top end on this. Okay, so that's a little bit smoother for what I want to go with this. And what we're going to do next is add on a phaser, like it had before. So if we look under modulation is what it would be. Flanger phaser. So we can just take a look at some of the presets so I don't have to go through all of these. Blues guitar. Now normally I'd be dialing these in a little bit more. How to imitate an analog synth. Now we're going to dial in its mix. Like I said, less is more, so I'm going for not an insane amount of mix on these. Okay, so we've added a little bit of phaser to it. Another thing we could add on is some delay. So let's do a stereo delay. Take a look at some of our presets once again. Answer delay. Now this already has a nice mix to it. So I actually like that. Let's turn down the mix here a little bit. Now there's specialized delays and stuff that actually do pitch shifting and stuff with them, and those can create some really interesting effects, but they're usually commercial. I can't think of any freeware ones. But yeah, that's something you can keep in mind. Now another thing I like doing is a little bit of clipping. I don't have any specific plugins installed that I'd be using right now. Just because I had a system crash, so I don't have all my plugins reinstalled at the moment. But I like using tape saturation simulators. I also like doing real tape saturation and a lot of analog tape stuff. But what we're going to do is say, let's use the tube. So this is going to add a little bit more noise back to it. Let's overdrive it. Yeah, it's a little bit too much warm distortion. Turn the drive down a little bit. Now, in real life, what I'd usually be doing right now is running this through some of my actual tube hardware instead of using the simulator, but we're going to use the simulator for argument's sake to show some of the things you can do. So that adds a little bit more texture to it. Now, what we can do next, we could add some more reverb to it again. We're going to save that for the end, actually. So this is showing a little bit of distortion. Let's add some chorus to it. That should be under modulation. Add chorus. E-piano. Wide backing vocals. That could actually... Wide synth bass. So we're going to turn down our chorus. Actually, if we turn our chorus mix up, you can hear exactly what it's doing, but let's turn it down a little bit. We have that. And finally, let's add another reverb on here. Just glue it back together now that we've added all this. Could use my UAD. Actually, you know what? I'm going to add a delay to it, just for argument's sake, to show some of the less is more and processing. So power plugin. Could use Moog filter. Where is what I'm looking for? Real verb. RE201. Here we go. So space echo. Haha, we're adding another delay to it. Where's your tape? That sounds good. This is just some of the presets once again, so we'll close that down. And finally we'll add a reverb to it. I know we're going a little bit overboard with our sends, but we'll just use one of the default Cubase ones. Reference. And we'll dial down our mix again. And we'll further EQ it. We will take off some of the low end. Let's taper off some of the high end as well. And see if we can enhance some frequencies. What would sound better boosted a little? Okay, so now we have this stacked up. That's actually sounding pretty nice for what I was going for. Let's slowly turn these all on one by one and see exactly what we built up just through experimenting with some of these. So first let me turn off these EQs because that was coloring the sound. So first we have our first reverb channel. Then our first EQ after the reverb. Phaser. Stereo delay. Tube distortion. Chorus. Another delay. And another reverb. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to replace this second delay with one of my little secret weapons. While in Flutter, this is a free plugin which I will keep a link to over on the side for you guys into the file. And we're just going to do an almost new preset on it. So this simulates some like tape degradation. I love using this on a lot of stuff. So you can hear it more present there. So what I'm going to do is add this after our reverb and just move our reverb up here. Turn on our EQ. Now with some more saturation and some actual analog effects, you could have something similar to Boards of Canada right there, which is one of my favorite groups, and also I use it to make sounds kind of like the 70s giallo horror films. And if you've ever heard some of my tracks, you could probably notice that. And I'm usually going from a clean sound into a lot of processing similar to this. This is an example of just a send bus. Now, before I showed you a group send bus, and what we're going to do with this is actually send this to a group channel. So add a group channel. Once again, so we can blend in our sounds if they all sound different. So we have this currently processed sound. We'll add another instance of Massive in here. And just load up a preset. Let's find another pad or something like that. Alien C, that sounds like it could be something cool. Blah blah blah, random sound, battery acid. Bigger on the inside. Once again, turn off the effects. Okay, so that's kind of interesting, but what we're going to do is, once again, blend these two together. So, let's just get a line from this, record something really quickly. Okay, so that's about 8 bars. What we'll do is just sync it over to here, put our loop on, and come up with something complementary. I'm not exactly too keen on this sound, so we'll try and find something really quickly that is more suiting for it. So let's see, Alpha Centauri. That is more suiting, and it's already got some effects on it, so we're going to leave the massive effects on it, so let's play this really quickly. You know what we're going to do? We'll do the easy thing. We're going to duplicate our actual MIDI channel here. What we'll do is transpose it. So we'll do MIDI, transpose. Let's transpose it up 3 semitones. So same melody, just transpose 3 semitones. So we need to get levels for this, obviously. And that should be looping. So we'll go back to the beginning. So we got our levels somewhat set, and once again we're going to be doing a send. So we'll do group send. Actually, this time we're going to be sending it, including... yeah, let's send it pre-fader. Just the same exact level. But we're going to leave this on this time. So to group 1, set our level, if it'll let me. There we go. Oh, it's not letting me click on it for some reason. Odd. Okay, so it's at about 3, so there we go. 3.12. Now we will send this one as well. Alright, that's at -12, about. So now that we've got those two dialed into its own group channel, we're leaving these the way they are. This is going to be another effects channel, processing both of these at the same time. So what we're going to do is compress it all to hell. Can do is add a reverb to it. I'll just do a room reverb. Let's find a reverb we like. Let's go with a hall, grand chamber. So what I've done essentially is I squashed the hell out of the dynamics for both of the channels. So by setting the threshold so low, compressing it, turning makeup off on it though. Have a very low attack and a very long release. So it keeps those two squashed. As you can see right now there's barely anything coming from it. So what we're going to have to do is boost some of this. And what I'm going to use this to do is add some high end. But first, I kind of want to taper off. Actually, no, I'm not going to taper off the high end on that. What I'm going to do is boost this by about, let's see, 20 dBs. Gives us something. Let's go back to our compressor and give it some makeup. Back down. Now we can dial this in. have this pegged all the way up. So what we're going to do is just mute this really quick. Turn this all the way down. That way you can hear what the difference is and what we're creating on that. So this is our blended channel that we're mixing into these other two. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Let's turn it down a little bit. And once again, you know what we can do to this? We can add wow and flutter, just because I love this. Turn it down a little bit. Now we can turn these back up to taste. And this was about the level that we had before. So now we have a much fuller sound, and I think you should have an understanding of some of the concepts that underlay with making a bus and also the individual send effects. Now, it's a good thing to have a wide plethora of reverb plugins and know them in and out. Same thing with delay. As far as distortion and stuff like that, that is to taste. But with a lot of ambient stuff, you're going to see a lot of reverb, a lot of, say, phasers, possibly some flangers, chorus, a lot of things to manipulate the sound, thicken it, and make it seem larger than life. Obviously, there is no right way to do effects. There is just the way that works best for you. But it's always good to keep in mind to do things slowly and incrementally, once again, because you can do some real damage to your sound if you do a lot of processing and say, if you do a lot of processing and then say you add a distortion plugin or something that enhances it quite a bit afterwards, that can completely destroy the little incremental work that you did ahead of time. So it's better to stack, say, distortion plugins slightly over each other, say saturation or something like that. The other thing to keep in mind, like I said, with some reverb plugins, the algorithms that they use can introduce in new content in the low end and add some rumble or something like that. So once again, it's good to do some EQing or filtering afterwards.